But these localized rituals become these fantastic pan-Andean events like this one, the Coyariti, the Star Festival. This occurs when the Pleiades reemerge in the sky and tens of thousands of Indians from across the southern Andes converge on pilgrimage to a sacred valley called the Sinicara, which is dominated by the three tongues of a glacier. It's a perfect expression of the contemporary vibrant pan-Andean world, which is a fusion of pre-Columbian ideas and 500 years of Christian belief. The central part of the ritual is that the individuals bring the crosses from their community to a center of the divine, carrying up the crosses over this arduous pilgrimage in the shadow of Ausangati, the most sacred of the Apus of the Incan Empire, only to plant the crosses in the ice such that they can be retrieved after 48 hours, returned home to the community. Now, these kind of contemporary rituals even allow us to begin to deconstruct such iconic places as Machu Picchu. How many of you have been to Machu Picchu? I'm sure quite a few. I'm sure it was described to you as a lost city. It was only a lost city in the fantasies of Hiram Bingham and the National Geographic Society. It sits perfectly positioned to control the one quadrant of empire the Inca could never conquer, Antisuyo, source of coca, spiritual inspiration. It is connected clearly to the network of 14,000 miles of Incan road that were built in less than a century by the Inca. It is completely geographically centered to protect the access to the sacred valley from the lowlands, but even more importantly, it is rooted in Incaic notions of cosmology. This is the axis mundi of the site, the Intihuatana, what Bingham called the hitching post of the sun. If you actually look at that, you'll notice the light on that stone always echoes the light on Huayna Picchu, the sugar loaf, the iconic sugar loaf, which is the Apu of this site. And if you go to the south of the Intihuatana, you find an altar. If you climb Huayna Picchu, you find another altar. You take a direct north-south bearing, you find to your astonishment that that bearing bisects the Intihuatana, continues to the skyline, where it goes right into the heart of Salcantay, sister of Ausangati, second most important mountain to the Inca. When the Southern Cross is at the southernmost point in the sky, embedded in the Milky Way, the Southern Cross is directly in that same alignment. But what is the river that comes along like a serpent around the base of Machu Picchu? That's the Urubamba, the Vilcanota, which is seen as the earthly equivalent of the Milky Way. It's also the route that Viracocha walked at the dawn of time when he brought civilization into existence. But where does the river begin? In the very snows of Ausangati, in the snows of the Coyariti, where to this day, 500 years after the conquest, thousands of people go back to pay respect to the earth. The tragedy here is that the glaciers are receding at such a rate that traditionally, at the end of the festival, in addition to taking the crosses back to your community, you carried chunks of ice on your back so you could bring it back to the elders to complete that kind of reciprocal cycle that allowed the grace of the divine to touch everybody in all the communities in southern Andes. The people that have seen the glaciers receding so quickly that they have ceased that practice that completes that sacred cycle, even though clearly they have no culpability whatsoever in the global forces that are having that impact. And this is something that I see all the time, the voices of indigenous people saying, stop. I recently made a film with the elder brothers, the Arawakos and the Kohi. These are the people who are the descendants of the ancient Tairona, the great civilization of goldsmiths that carpeted the Caribbean coastal plain. In the wake of the conquest, they retreated into an isolated volcanic massif that soars to 20,000 feet, the highest coastal mountain range on Earth. To this day, in a blood-stained continent, they were never conquered by the Spanish, and they remain ruled by a ritual priesthood. The training for the priesthood is rather extraordinary. And the way we were able to do this journey was because this man walked into my office with the Colombian ambassador at the National Geographic, leading a political delegation, and I interrupted him and I said, Danilo, excuse me, but you look a lot like this man on the right, a photograph I took in 1974. Turns out he was a son of my friend Adalberto, who had been killed by the paramilitaries. And I said to Danilo, I hate to tell you, but when you were an infant, I carried you on my back up and down the mountains. And based on that connection, Danilo invited us back to do something that had never been done. And this man, incidentally, is Eugenio, 35 years later as an elder. They invited us to accompany the initiation of the priests. What happens is that the They literally believe their prayers maintain the cosmic balance. And the initiation of the priesthood is extremely austere. The acolytes spend 18 years in a shadowy world of darkness, either inside the men's sacred temple or in the immediate environs of it. All that time, the world only exists as an abstraction as they are enculturated in the values of their society, values that maintain the idea that their prayers and their prayers alone maintain the ecological balance. And at the end of this arduous initiation, they're suddenly taken on pilgrimage from the sea to the ice and back to the sea, from the sea to the heart of the world. And the whole idea is suddenly, for the first time in their lives, they see the world as it really exists. And the priest sort of steps back and says, you see, it's as I've told you. It's that beautiful. It's yours to protect. The metaphor of the culture is a loom. They say, upon this loom, I weave my life. As they move up and down the ecological gradient, getting closer to the heart of the world, even their hats echo the snow peaks of Saranqua, the great goddess. And indeed, they refer to their movements up and down the gradient as threads, so that over the course of a lifetime, an individual weaves a cloth over the body of the earth. We got up there and were just about to make the sacred payments when we had a brush with the FARC who were trying to kidnap us, and so we had to escape in the middle of the night. But fortunately, we were able to hand our cameras over to one of our colleagues who finished the film for us as we went back down to the sea, only to find the sacred sites covered with whorehouses, discotheques. But that didn't stop the Arhuacos, who continued this cycle of bringing the heights to the seas to the heights, maintaining this sort of cycle of life, death, and rebirth. And it's just humbling to think that 2 hours from Miami Beach, the elder brothers are sitting there praying for your well-being. They see the impact of global warming, the snowfields are melting, the paramos are drying out, and they say in full paragraphs, why are you ruining the world? They think of themselves as the elder brothers. They dismiss the rest of us as the younger brothers have brought the world to its knees.